The stars looked peaceful from the bridge of the Caltharian warship. Scout Commander Velrith had seen hundreds of worlds in his 20 years of service, but this one was different. The blue and green planet floating on his screen looked almost too perfect. Oceans covered most of the surface, with brown and green continents scattered between them. White clouds swirled in beautiful patterns. "Sir, the scan is complete," his junior officer reported. "The planet has everything we need. Water metals, rare minerals, and there's a native species." Velrith leaned forward. "Show me." The screen changed to show images of cities, vehicles, and billions of creatures walking on two legs. They looked fragile, small. Their largest weapons were primitive explosives and metal projectiles. They didn't even have energy shields. "They call themselves humans," the officer continued. "They've only just started exploring their own moon. No faster than light travel. No plasma weapons. They still fight each other with chemical bombs." Velrith smiled. This would be an easy conquest. The Empire needed new worlds, and this one was ripe for taking. He prepared his report to send back to Admiral Korvax and the main fleet, but then his science officer called out, "Commander, we found something strange." "What is it?" "There's a data beacon in orbit, very old. It's from the precursor race." Velrith felt a chill run down his spine. The precursors had vanished millions of years ago, but their technology still worked. They had been the most advanced species in the galaxy. If they left a message here, it was important. "Play it." The message appeared on the screen in 17 different ancient languages. Velrith's computer translated them all, and they all said the same thing. "Death world. Quarantine maintained. Do not approach." The bridge fell silent. "Death world." The precursors had marked this planet as dangerous. "That's impossible," the junior officer said. "Look at them. They're weak. Their weapons are toys compared to ours." Velrith stared at the screen. The humans did look harmless. Perhaps the precursors had been wrong, or perhaps they had left the message as a test. Either way, the decision wasn't his to make. He sent the full report to Admiral Korvax, including the precursor warning. 3 days later, the response came back. The Admiral had reviewed everything. His orders were simple. Ignore the ancient superstition. Prepare for invasion. The Empire needs this world. Velrith felt uneasy, but he followed his orders. The fleet would arrive within the month on Earth. Captain Minho stood in the command center beneath Sol. The screens around him showed thousands of data points from satellites, telescopes, and listening stations. He had been tracking unusual signals for weeks, but now there was no doubt. "They're real," he said quietly. "The aliens are real." Dr. Yuna stood beside him, her face pale. She was one of Earth's leading scientists, specializing in the search for alien life. She had dreamed of this moment for years, but not like this. "These aren't explorers," she said, pointing at the data. "Look at the formation. Those are warships. Hundreds of them. And they're all coming here." Minho picked up the phone to call the president. Within hours, every government on Earth knew the truth. An alien fleet was approaching, and they weren't coming in peace. The world erupted in panic and preparation. Armies mobilized. Scientists worked around the clock. Engineers reinforced defenses. But everyone knew the truth. Earth had barely mastered space travel. These aliens had crossed the galaxy. The technology gap was enormous. Minho watched the preparations from his command post. He thought about his daughter, Ji-young, who was only 8 years old. What kind of world would she grow up in? Would she even have the chance to grow up? "How long do we have?" he asked Yuna. She checked her calculations again. 2 weeks. Maybe 3 if they slow down. "And our chances?" Yuna didn't answer right away. She pulled up simulations that military scientists had run. Every scenario ended the same way. Against their technology, we lose quickly. Minho nodded slowly. He had been a soldier for 15 years. He had fought in conflicts around the world. He knew when the odds were impossible, but he also knew that humans had a habit of surviving impossible situations. "Then we don't fight them head on," he said. "We fight smart. We use everything we have. Our planet. Our knowledge. Our willingness to do whatever it takes." Yuna looked at him with surprise. "You think we can win?" "I think we can make them regret coming here." Across the city, Lieutenant Do-hyun was briefing his Special Forces team. They were South Korea's best soldiers, trained for the most dangerous missions, but nothing had prepared them for this. "We don't know what we're facing," Do-hyun told his men, "but we know one thing. This is our home. Our families are here. Our children. We fight because there's nowhere to run. His team nodded. They were scared, but they were ready. In a university laboratory, engineer Hae-yoon was studying every piece of information Earth had gathered about alien technology. It wasn't much. A few intercepted signals, some theoretical physics, but she had to find something useful. Some weakness they could exploit. Her hand shook as she worked. She kept thinking about her parents, her younger brother, all the people who were counting on her to help find a solution. The pressure was crushing. Admiral Korvac stood on the bridge of his flagship as the fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of Earth's solar system. 300 warships, the most powerful battle group in the Empire. They had conquered 47 worlds. This would be number 48. All ships report ready, Admiral, his second-in-command reported. Korvac looked at the blue planet in the distance. It looked so peaceful, so innocent. He thought about the precursor warning again, then pushed it from his mind. Ancient races always exaggerated threats. It made them feel important. Send the surrender message, he ordered. Standard terms. They submit or we destroy them. The message was broadcast across all of Earth's communication channels. Surrender immediately or face complete destruction. In the Seoul Command Center, Minho heard the message. So did every other military commander on Earth. The response was unanimous. Earth would fight. Minho looked at Yuna. Remember this moment. This is when humanity shows the galaxy who we really are. Yuna nodded, though she wasn't sure if that would be enough. The alien fleet was moving toward Earth. In 3 days they would arrive. In 3 days the war would begin. The peaceful blue planet was about to become a battlefield. And the Empire was about to learn why the precursors had left their warning. The Caltharian fleet emerged from the darkness of space like a swarm of metal insects. 300 warships surrounded Earth, blocking every escape route. Their hulls gleamed under the light of the sun. Each ship carried enough firepower to destroy a city. Admiral Korvac sat in his command chair and watched the primitive planet below. No response to his surrender demand. These humans were either brave or stupid. He suspected the latter. All ships battle formation, he commanded. Target their military installations and orbital platforms. Spare the civilians if possible. We need workers for the mines. On Earth, every military base went to full alert. Fighter jets launched from carriers and airfields. Missiles armed themselves in silos. Orbital defense satellites powered up their weapons. Humanity was about to throw everything it had at the invaders. Captain Minho stood in the command center, surrounded by screens showing the disposition of forces worldwide. He had command of the Asian theater, but he could see what was happening everywhere. America, Europe, Africa, South America. Everyone was preparing for the same desperate fight. Sir, they're moving into attack position, an officer reported. Minho picked up the phone, connecting him to the other commanders. All units. When they come in range, hit them with everything. Show them humans don't surrender. Dr. Yuna stood beside him, her eyes fixed on the tactical display. She had run 1,000 simulations. None of them ended well. But she had also studied human history. Humans had a way of surviving things they shouldn't survive. The first wave of human fighters reached the Caltharian fleet. Missiles streaked through space, leaving white trails. For a moment, hope flickered. The missiles were hitting their targets. Then the Caltharian shields activated. Blue energy fields surrounded each ship. The missiles exploded harmlessly against the barriers. The fighters opened fire with their guns. The bullets bounced off the shields like rain. The Caltharian ships returned fire. Their plasma weapons cut through space in brilliant beams of red light. Where they touched, human ships simply ceased to exist. No explosion, no debris. Just empty space where a fighter had been. In 6 hours, Earth lost half its space-based military assets. The orbital defense platforms fought until their power cells ran dry, then fell silent. The satellite network went dark. Thousands of pilots died in the cold vacuum of space. Minho watched it happen on his screens. Each blinking light that disappeared represented lives lost. Friends, brothers in arms. But he couldn't let himself think about that. Not yet. They're beginning atmospheric entry, an officer called out. Landing sites identified. Seoul, New York, Cairo, São Paulo, London, Beijing. They're hitting every major city. Get the evacuation orders out, Minho commanded. Move civilians to the shelters. All military units engage the enemy wherever they land. The Caltharian landing ships descended through Earth's atmosphere. They were massive craft, each carrying 1,000 soldiers and their equipment. They landed in the centers of major cities, their thrusters scorching the streets and buildings around them. Lieutenant Do-hyun watched from a rooftop as 3 landing ships touched down in downtown Seoul. The air shimmered with heat. Then the doors opened and the Caltharian soldiers emerged. They were giants, 9 feet tall, covered in powered armor that made them look even larger. They moved with mechanical precision, spreading out into formation. Each one carried a weapon that hummed with barely contained energy. "All units open fire," Do-hyun shouted into his radio. His men opened up with everything they had: assault rifles, machine guns, rocket launchers. The noise was deafening. Bullets struck the aliens and their armor. For a moment, Do-hyun thought they might have a chance. Then the aliens activated their personal shields. The bullets stopped in mid-air, falling harmlessly to the ground. The rockets exploded against invisible barriers. The aliens didn't even flinch. They raised their weapons and returned fire. Red plasma beams cut through the air. Buildings exploded. Concrete vaporized. Men died without time to scream. "Fall back," Do-hyun screamed. "Fall back to secondary positions." His platoon broke and ran. They had trained for years. They were the best soldiers South Korea had. But they were fighting an enemy that was beyond anything they had imagined. Of the 50 men in Do-hyun's platoon, only 12 made it to the fallback position. Do-hyun counted them with a sick feeling in his stomach. He had trained with these men. He knew their families. And in less than 5 minutes, most of them were gone. "What do we do, sir?" asked Sergeant Jinwoo, his face pale with shock. Do-hyun looked back at the alien forces advancing through the city. They were unstoppable. But giving up wasn't an option. "We adapt," he said. "We find their weaknesses, and we fight smarter." In the chaos of the retreat, Do-hyun's unit picked up a civilian who had been trapped in the combat zone. Her name was Hyun, and she had been working in an engineering lab when the invasion started. She was terrified but alive. "Can you walk?" Do-hyun asked her. "Yes," she said, her voice shaking. "But where are we going?" "They're everywhere." "Underground," Do-hyun replied. "The sewers, the subway tunnels. Places where their size is a disadvantage." Around the world, the same scene was playing out. Human forces engaged the invaders with conventional weapons, and conventional weapons failed. The technology gap was too wide. Within 3 days, every major city on Earth was under alien control. But taking cities wasn't the same as winning a war. Dr. Yuna and her team of scientists were evacuated to an underground research facility in the mountains east of Seoul. The facility had been built during the Cold War as a nuclear bunker. Now it was humanity's last hope for finding a scientific solution. "We need to understand their technology," Yuna told her team. "Every piece of alien equipment we can recover, bring it here. We need to find weaknesses." The scientists worked with desperate energy. They studied pieces of destroyed alien drones. They analyzed recordings of the plasma weapons. They dissected every piece of data they could gather. Captain Minho coordinated the retreat from his hidden command post. It was built deep inside a mountain, connected by tunnels to a network of hidden bases. The main military was broken, but the resistance was just beginning. All commanders' new orders, Minho broadcast on encrypted channels. "Conventional war is over. We switched to guerrilla tactics immediately. Hit and run. Sabotage, make them pay for every inch of ground." Across Earth, military units disappeared into forests, mountains, ruins, and underground. They couldn't win pitched battles, but they could make the occupation hell for the invaders. Admiral Korvac stood in the main square of New York City, now designated as the Empire's Earth headquarters. The conquest had gone exactly as planned. 3 days, minimal casualties. The humans had been crushed. He looked at the ruined buildings around him and felt satisfied. Another world added to the Empire, another primitive species brought under control. "Admiral, we're receiving reports of scattered resistance," an officer reported. "Small groups attacking supply lines and isolated patrols." Korvax waved his hand dismissively. "Remnants. They'll surrender when they realize how hopeless their situation is. Post guards on the important facilities and let time handle the rest." But Korvax had made a critical mistake. He assumed that humans would act like every other conquered species. He assumed they would recognize when they were beaten. He didn't understand that for humans, being beaten was just the beginning. In the ruins of Seoul, Lieutenant Do-hyun led his surviving soldiers and the engineer Haeun into the subway tunnels. They could hear the aliens marching above them. But down here in the dark, humans had the advantage. We lost the first battle, Do-hyun told his team. Now we show them what a real war looks like. 2 weeks had passed since the invasion. Admiral Korvax reviewed the casualty reports with growing unease. The numbers didn't make sense. They had conquered the major cities. They controlled the strategic resources, so why were his soldiers still dying? Explain this to me, he demanded, pointing at the screen. We've lost 300 soldiers in the past week, but there haven't been any major battles. His intelligence officer shifted uncomfortably. Sir, they're not fighting major battles anymore. They're using hit-and-run tactics, ambushes, traps. They attack our patrols and disappear before we can respond. Then increase patrol sizes. We tried that, sir. They just avoid the larger patrols and hit the small ones. And when we send troops to investigate, they disappear into the terrain. The cities are easy to hold, but between the cities is wilderness. Mountains, forests, underground tunnels. They know this terrain. We don't. Korvax slammed his fist on the desk. They're primitives. How are they causing us this much trouble? The intelligence officer pulled up a map of Earth. Red dots marked locations where Caltharian soldiers had gone missing. There were hundreds of them. Sir, I think we need to consider that the precursor warning wasn't superstition. Korvax glared at him. Get out. In the ruins beneath Seoul, Lieutenant Do-hyun's resistance cell had grown from 12 survivors to nearly 50 fighters. Word had spread about the humans who were striking back. Other survivors had found them, bringing weapons, supplies, and most importantly, hope. Do-hyun studied a map of the city's subway system. The tunnels connected like veins beneath the surface. The aliens controlled the streets above, but down here, humans ruled. They're creatures of open spaces, he explained to his team. Their homeworld had wide plains and gentle forests. They've never fought in tight corridors, never dealt with urban warfare. That's our advantage. Engineer Haeun had proven to be invaluable. She had studied the pieces of alien equipment they'd recovered from destroyed drones. She couldn't figure out how the advanced technology worked, but she found something useful. They're power cells, she explained, showing a small alien battery to the group. They're incredibly efficient, but they have a weakness. If you overload them with a strong electromagnetic pulse, they explode. Violently. Can we make an EMP weapon? Do-hyun asked. We don't need to. We have tons of EMP devices. They're used in police operations to stop cars. We just need to amplify them. Within days, Haeun had modified several EMP devices into powerful bombs. The next alien patrol that entered their section of the subway never came out. The resistance ambushed them, hit them with the EMP bombs, and watched their shields fail. Without their shields, the aliens were vulnerable. Bullets and explosives did the rest. The resistance cell took the alien weapons and armor. They were learning, adapting, turning the invaders' own technology against them. Similar stories were playing out across Earth. In the Amazon rainforest, resistance fighters used the dense jungle to ambush supply convoys. In the Rocky Mountains, snipers picked off alien soldiers from impossible distances. In the deserts of Africa, fighters buried explosives in the sand and detonated them remotely. Humans had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of war. Every tactic, every strategy, every dirty trick was now being used against the Caltharians. But it was Dr. Yuna's discovery that would change everything. In her underground laboratory, Yuna had been studying the few alien prisoners that resistance cells had captured. The Caltharians were impressive physically, strong, fast. Their biology was efficient and well adapted to their homeworld, but their homeworld was nothing like Earth. They have almost no immune system. Yuna explained to Captain Minho during a video call. Their planet is incredibly clean. No bacteria, no viruses, nothing. They've never needed to develop defenses against biological threats. Minho leaned forward. And Earth? Earth is covered in bacteria and viruses. Trillions of them. Most are harmless to us because we've evolved alongside them, but to the aliens. She pulled up a graph showing alien casualties. Look at this. 10% of their forces are already sick. Common Earth bacteria are infecting them through cuts and abrasions. Their medical technology can't keep up. Can we weaponize this? Yuna hesitated. Biological warfare was banned by international law. But international law didn't account for alien invasions. Yes, she said quietly, we can. In New York, Admiral Korvax was dealing with his own problems. More of his soldiers were falling ill each day. At first he thought it was just exhaustion, but now entire units were in the medical bays suffering from mysterious infections. "What's causing this?" he demanded from his chief medical officer. "The planet itself, sir. It's covered in microscopic organisms. They're getting into wounds, being breathed in, absorbed through skin contact. Our immune systems have no defense against them." "Then develop a defense." "We're trying, sir. But there are millions of different organisms on this planet. We can't vaccinate against all of them." Korvax felt fear creeping into his mind. The precursor warning echoed in his thoughts. Death world. They had called it a death world. The situation grew worse when prisoners began to talk. Korvax ordered the interrogation of human soldiers to understand their tactics better. But the interrogations didn't go as planned. A pilot named Tajan sat across from Korvax in the interrogation room. The human was bruised and beaten, but his eyes were defiant. "Why do you keep fighting?" Korvax demanded. "You've lost. We control your cities. We have superior technology. Surrender and spare your people more suffering." Tajan actually laughed. Blood dripped from his split lip, but he laughed. "You don't get it, do you?" Tajan said. "You think this is over because you won a few battles? We've been fighting each other for 10,000 years, wars that lasted decades, conflicts that killed millions. We've perfected every method of killing that exists." "Your weapons are primitive," Korvax said. "Weapons aren't just guns and bombs," Tajan replied. "Weapons are psychology, fear, exhaustion, disease, starvation. We know 100 ways to destroy an enemy without ever facing them in battle. You invaded our home. You threatened our families. Do you really think we'll ever stop fighting?" Korvax ordered the prisoner executed, but the words stayed with him. He began reviewing Earth's history files in detail. The humans' wars were brutal. They fought in cities, jungles, deserts, mountains, underwater, and even in the air. They had weapons designed specifically to cause suffering. They had tactics refined over millennia of constant conflict. And now all of that experience was focused on one target: the Caltharian Empire. Lieutenant Dohyun's resistance cell launched their most ambitious operation yet. They had located a Caltharian supply depot on the outskirts of Seoul. It was heavily guarded, but Haeun had found a weakness in their security systems. "Their sensors are designed to detect high-tech threats," she explained. "But we're low-tech. If we move slowly and use the sewer system to approach, we can get close without being detected." The operation took 3 days of careful preparation. On the night of the attack, 20 resistance fighters crawled through the sewers with homemade explosives and stolen alien weapons. They emerged inside the depot's perimeter. The attack was swift and brutal. EMP bombs disabled the alien shields. Human bullets and explosives did the rest. The depot was destroyed, and the resistance made off with an entire transport ship loaded with supplies. More importantly, they had captured alien technology and vehicles. Haeun immediately began studying them, looking for more weaknesses to exploit. News of the successful raid spread through the resistance networks. Morale soared. Humans could hurt the invaders. They could take back their world. One ambush, one raid, one death at a time. Admiral Korvax received the report about the supply depot with growing dread. The humans weren't just resisting. They were learning, getting stronger. And his own forces were getting weaker. He stood at a window overlooking New York City. Somewhere out there in the ruins, humans were watching him, planning, waiting for their moment to strike. For the first time since arriving at Earth, Korvax understood the precursor warning. This was a death world, and they had walked into a trap. Captain Minho stood in the hidden command center, coordinating resistance operations across the entire planet. What had started as scattered survivors had grown into a global network. Every continent had active resistance cells. Every occupied city had fighters hiding in the shadows. "Report from Africa," an officer called out. Resistance forces destroyed an alien mining operation in Congo. 17 enemy casualties. South America confirmed successful ambush on a supply convoy, another officer added. No friendly casualties. Minho studied the map on the main screen. Red pins marked successful operations. There were dozens of them. The aliens controlled the cities, but they couldn't move between them safely. They couldn't operate their facilities without constant guard. They were winning the war but losing the peace. "Send out new tactical guidelines," Minho ordered. "All resistance cells are to focus on making the occupation as expensive as possible. Hit their supply lines. poison their water, sabotage their equipment, make them afraid to leave their bases. Earth's resistance was using tactics refined in Vietnam, Afghanistan, and countless other guerrilla wars. The Caltharians had never faced anything like it. They were trained for conventional warfare between technological equals. They had no doctrine for fighting an enemy that refused to meet them in open battle. Lieutenant Do Hyun had become a legend among the resistance. His cell and soul had grown to over 200 fighters. They controlled large sections of the underground tunnel system and launched raids almost daily. Tonight's target was an alien communication hub. Hyun had identified it as critical to their command structure. Taking it out would blind the aliens in the entire region. Remember the plan. Do Hyun briefed his team. We hit fast and hard. Set the charges. Get out before reinforcements arrive. No heroics. The team moved through the sewers like ghosts. They had learned to mask their heat signatures and move in patterns that confused alien sensors. They emerged in a building next to the communication hub. Hyun worked on the wall with cutting equipment. She had become an expert at alien technology, reverse engineering their equipment to create human weapons. She had even modified some of their armor to fit human soldiers. Opening in 30 seconds, she whispered. The team burst through the wall into the communication hub. The alien guards never had time to raise the alarm. EMP bombs knocked out their shields. Suppressed weapons took them down silently. Within 2 minutes, the resistance controlled the facility. Plant the explosives, Do Hyun ordered. 2 minutes and we're gone. But as they were leaving, they found something unexpected. The communication hub had intact alien transport ships in the garage. Small ones used for moving equipment and personnel around the city. Hyun's eyes lit up. We could steal these. With alien ships, we could hit targets anywhere in the city. Do Hyun hesitated. Taking the ships would slow their escape. But having alien vehicles would be an enormous advantage. Do it, he decided. Get them started. Hyun hot-wired 3 of the ships while the explosives ticked down. The team loaded onto the stolen vehicles and flew them out just as the building exploded behind them. Admiral Korvax got the report an hour later. He stared at it in disbelief. They stole our ships? Yes, sir. And they're using them. We've had 3 more attacks by what appear to be our own vehicles. Korvax felt his control of the situation slipping. The humans were adapting faster than he could respond. They were using captured weapons, stolen vehicles, and tactics that seemed to come from nowhere. But the real nightmare was the disease. Dr. Yuna's biological warfare program had begun in earnest. She cultured aggressive strains of bacteria that Earth's ecosystem produced naturally. Then she had resistant cells introduce them into areas with heavy alien presence. The results were devastating. Caltharian soldiers who got minor cuts during combat found themselves fighting infections days later. Their wounds wouldn't heal. Simple injuries became life-threatening. We're losing more soldiers to disease than to combat, the medical officer reported to Korvax. And it's getting worse. The organisms are everywhere. In the water, the air, the soil. We can't sterilize an entire planet. Korvax authorized the use of environmental suits for all soldiers. But the suits were hot, uncomfortable, and limited mobility. They made soldiers slow and clumsy, perfect targets for human snipers and ambushes. The Resistance also discovered another advantage. Humans needed less sleep than Caltharians. The aliens required 16 hours of rest every cycle. Humans needed only 8, so the Resistance attacked at night. During storms, in extreme heat and cold, any conditions that gave them an edge. Caltharian soldiers began to crack under the constant pressure. They couldn't rest, couldn't relax. Any moment could bring an attack. The psychological strain was enormous. Captain Minho exploited this ruthlessly. He ordered resistance cells to conduct harassment operations even when they couldn't inflict real damage. Random gunfire, explosions in the distance, anything to keep the aliens on edge. Fear is a weapon, he told his commanders. Make them afraid of every shadow. Every sound, break their will to fight. The psychological warfare worked. Caltharian units began requesting relief. Morale plummeted. Some soldiers refused to leave their bases. The Empire's military machine, which had conquered dozens of worlds, was being broken by a species that didn't even have energy shields. In the mountains of Korea, Dr. Yuna continued her work. She had discovered that Earth's plants produced toxins that were deadly to Caltharians. Certain fungi released spores that attacked their respiratory systems. Even common molds could kill them. She began cultivating these organisms and distributing them to resistance cells. Soon, occupied buildings were becoming toxic to the invaders. They had to constantly sweep for biological threats, adding another layer of paranoia to their daily operations. But the turning point came during the Battle of Seoul. Captain Minho had been planning it for weeks. Every resistance cell in the city, every fighter who could hold a weapon, 50,000 humans, armed with a mix of human and stolen alien weapons ready to take back their capital. The attack began at dawn. Simultaneous strikes on every Caltharian position in the city. Explosions rocked alien bases. Transport ships were destroyed on the ground. Communication systems went dark. Lieutenant Do-Yun led the assault on the main alien command center. His team had captured enough alien equipment that they looked almost like a Caltharian unit. They drove stolen transport ships right up to the fortified building. Now, Do-Yun shouted. The ships unleashed their weapons at point-blank range. The building's shields failed under the concentrated fire. Human fighters poured out of the ships and into the building. The fighting was brutal. Room by room, floor by floor, the aliens had superior technology, but they were fighting in close quarters where their size was a disadvantage. Human fighters used the tight corridors and stairwells to negate the aliens' reach advantage. Haeun had modified human grenades to work against alien shields. She threw them ahead of the assault teams, knocking out shields and leaving the aliens vulnerable. The modified weapons worked perfectly. After 12 hours of continuous fighting, the command center fell. The Caltharian commander was killed. His staff was captured. Across the city, resistance forces pressed their advantage. With the command center destroyed, alien units couldn't coordinate. They fought as isolated groups, and isolated groups could be overwhelmed. By nightfall, the aliens were retreating. They abandoned their forward positions and consolidated in the city center. By dawn of the second day, they were evacuating to their ships in orbit. Seoul was free. The news spread across Earth like wildfire. Humanity had retaken a major city. It could be done. The aliens could be beaten. Admiral Korvax watched the evacuation of Seoul from his command ship and knew his career was finished. He had lost a major city to primitives. The Empire would never forgive this failure. But more importantly, he was losing the war. His forces were sick, demoralized, and dying in dozens of small battles every day. The humans were getting stronger while his soldiers grew weaker. He sent a priority message to the Empire's high command. Request immediate reinforcements. The situation on Earth has become critical. The natives are far more dangerous than initial assessments indicated. The response came back within hours. Reinforcements denied. Casualty rates unacceptable. Prepare for phased withdrawal. Earth is to be abandoned. Korvax stared at the message in shock. The Empire was retreating. They were admitting defeat. For the first time in recorded history, the Caltharian Empire was abandoning a conquest. And it was all because of the small, fragile humans who refused to accept that they had lost. In the streets of Seoul, Lieutenant Do-Hyun and his fighters celebrated their victory. They had paid a terrible price. Thousands had died in the battle, but they had won. They had proven that humans could defeat the invaders. Haeun stood beside Do-Hyun looking at the ruined city. So much had been destroyed, so many lives lost, but they were still here, still fighting.
Still alive. Is it over?
She asked. Do-Hyun shook his head. Not yet, but we're winning. And that's more than anyone thought possible 2 months ago. 6 months after the invasion began, Admiral Korvax stood in his command ship's bridge and looked at the casualty reports one final time. 40% losses. 40% of his invasion force was dead, sick, or too injured to fight. The numbers were catastrophic. The Empire's high command had been clear. Withdraw from Earth. The planet was too costly to hold. The resources weren't worth the price in blood. Korvax had argued against it at first. The Empire never retreated, never admitted defeat. But even he couldn't deny the truth anymore. Earth was killing them. The humans fought with a ferocity that no other species had shown. They used weapons that the Empire considered barbaric. Chemical agents that melted flesh. Biological weapons that infected and killed. Psychological tactics that drove soldiers insane. But worse than the weapons was the determination. Every human seemed willing to die rather than surrender. They fought in the ruins of their cities, in the forests and mountains, in sewers and tunnels. There was nowhere the Caltharians could go without facing ambush, and the planet itself was hostile. The diseases, The bacteria, the viruses, every breath on Earth was a risk. Every drop of water could carry infection. The Caltharians' advanced medical technology couldn't keep up with the sheer diversity of threats. Begin the withdrawal, Korvax ordered. All ground forces are to evacuate to the ships. Abandon all equipment we can't carry. Priority is personnel recovery. His officers moved to execute the orders. Across Earth, Caltharian forces began pulling back to their landing zones. They fought running battles with human resistance forces every step of the way. In Seoul, Captain Minho received the reports with cautious optimism. The aliens were retreating. After 6 months of brutal fighting, humanity was winning. Don't let up, he ordered his commanders. Hit them as they withdraw. Make them pay for every step back to their ships. Lieutenant Do-hyun's resistance cell had grown into a full military unit. They now had over 500 fighters, armed with a mix of human and captured alien weapons. When the Caltharians began their retreat from Seoul, Do-hyun's forces harassed them constantly. They're trying to reach their landing zones, Do-hyun told his team. We make that journey as painful as possible. The resistance set up ambush points along every route. They destroyed bridges and blocked roads. They used stolen alien vehicles to strike and fade before the enemy could respond. Every kilometer of the retreat cost the Caltharians more lives. Haeun had become a master of alien technology. She could hotwire their vehicles, hack their communication systems, and even disable their weapons remotely. Her skills made her invaluable to the resistance effort. I've found a way to jam their shields temporarily, she explained to Do-hyun. It only lasts a few seconds, but if we time it right, we can take down even their heavy armor units. They tested the new weapon on a Caltharian armored column, trying to reach their evacuation point. The shield jammers worked perfectly. For 3 seconds, the aliens' shields failed. In those 3 seconds, the resistance hit them with everything they had. Rockets, explosives, armor-piercing rounds. The armored column was destroyed. Only a handful of aliens made it to the evacuation point on foot. Dr. Yuna watched the retreat from her mountain laboratory. She had mixed feelings. Part of her was glad the aliens were leaving. The war had cost so much. Hundreds of millions dead, entire cities destroyed, years of rebuilding ahead. But another part of her was analyzing everything they had learned. Earth now had access to alien technology, the wreckage of ships, captured weapons, intact computers with alien data. Humanity's technology had just advanced by centuries. We need to study everything, she told her team. Before they leave, we need to capture as much of their technology as possible. This is our chance to level the playing field. Resistance forces across the planet focused on capturing alien equipment during the withdrawal. Every transport ship, every weapon, every piece of technology they could get their hands on. It would all be valuable in the future. Admiral Korvax knew he couldn't leave quietly. The Empire's pride demanded some show of force. He ordered orbital bombardments of several abandoned human military bases. The weapons fire from space turned empty buildings into craters. It was meaningless destruction, but it made him feel slightly better. But he couldn't bring himself to target civilian areas. Despite everything, he still had some honor left. The humans were warriors. Savage, brutal, and terrifying, but warriors nonetheless. He wouldn't murder their children. Before he left, Korvax did something unusual. He sent a direct message to Captain Minho on an open channel. Captain Minho of Earth's military forces. I am Admiral Korvax of the Caltharian Empire. In my career, I have conquered 47 worlds. I have defeated 20 different species. But I have never faced an enemy like humanity. Minho listened to the message in his command center, surrounded by his staff. We underestimated you, Korvax continued. We saw your short lives and fragile bodies and assumed you were weak. We didn't understand that a species that lives fast must adapt faster. Your world has trained you to be survivors. Every threat on your planet has made you stronger. The Admiral paused. When he spoke again, his voice was heavy with something that might have been respect. The precursors left a warning about your world. They called it a death trap. We thought it was superstition. We were wrong. Your planet is the most dangerous place I have ever encountered, not because of your weapons or your technology, but because of you, because humans would rather die than surrender. The Empire is withdrawing from Earth, not because we lack the firepower to destroy you. We could turn your planet into ash from orbit, but we cannot occupy it. We cannot control it, and we will not sacrifice our entire military for one world, no matter how valuable. You have won, Captain Minho. Humanity has won, and the galaxy will remember what happened here. They will remember that Earth cannot be conquered. The message ended. The command center was silent for a long moment. Then one of Minho's officers asked, "Do you think he means it? That they're really leaving?" Minho watched the tactical display as alien ships began lifting off from Earth's surface. "Yes, they're leaving. We won." The words felt strange. After 6 months of constant fighting, constant death, the idea of victory seemed unreal. But as more alien ships departed, rising into the sky and disappearing into space, the reality set in. Earth had survived. The final Caltharian ship left Earth's atmosphere 3 days later. Admiral Korvax took one last look at the blue-green planet on his screens. It looked so peaceful from space, so innocent, but he knew the truth now. That beautiful planet was home to the most dangerous species in the galaxy. "Navigation, set course for home," he ordered. "Maximum speed. I never want to see this system again." As the fleet jumped to hyperspace, Korvax updated the precursor beacon that still orbited Earth. He added his own message to the ancient warning. Death world confirmed. Species human, highly aggressive, extremely adaptable, resistant to biological warfare. Skilled in guerrilla tactics and psychological operations. Recommendation: avoid at all costs. Do not approach under any circumstances. On Earth, the celebrations lasted for days. Cities that had been freed danced in the streets. Resistance fighters embraced each other, crying with relief and exhaustion. The aliens were gone. The war was over, but the work was just beginning. Captain Minho met with world leaders to establish a unified planetary defense force. The invasion had proven that Earth needed to speak with one voice to the galaxy. National borders mattered less when aliens were trying to conquer the whole planet. Lieutenant Dohyun and Hyun were honored as heroes. They had led the resistance in Seoul, one of the first cities to be freed. Both of them struggled with what they had done during the war. They had killed thousands, seen friends die, done things that would haunt them forever. But they had also saved their world. Dr. Yuna led the effort to study captured alien technology. Her team worked day and night to understand the principles behind faster-than-light travel, energy shields, and plasma weapons. Within a year, Earth had its first prototype shield generator. Within 2 years, human ships would travel between stars. The invasion had cost Earth terribly. 300 million dead, dozens of cities in ruins, economies shattered. But humanity had survived. And more than survived, they had grown stronger. As Earth rebuilt, they kept one eye on the stars. The Caltharians had found them once. Others would come eventually. Earth needed to be ready. But Earth also sent a message to the galaxy. A simple transmission that repeated on all frequencies. Earth survived. Earth stands. Earth will defend itself. To any species considering invasion, remember the Caltharian Empire. Remember what happened when they ignored the warning. This is a death world. You have been warned. In the underground bunker that had served as his command post, Minho stood with his daughter Ji-young. She was 9 now, a year older than when the war started. She had grown up during the invasion, learning to run to shelters and hide from aliens. "Is it really over, Dad?" she asked. Minho looked at the screens showing Earth's new defense satellites and patrol ships. Human technology mixed with alien designs. The planet was transforming into a fortress. "This war is over," he told her, "but we'll never be completely safe. The galaxy knows about us now. We have to stay strong. Stay ready."